All right, good morning. Today is Wednesday, December 11th, 2024. It appears that we do have a quorum. I do hereby call this ad hoc committee meeting of the Industrial Development Board to order, which was item number 1 on the agenda. Moving to item number 2, public comment period. Public comment period. The Industrial Development Board holds a designated public comment period at each meeting. Members of the public in attendance may provide comments to the board or its committees during such designated time. Members of the public are allotted 2 minutes for public comment. No advanced registration is required. Is there anyone here from the public? We will close the public comment period. Moving on to item number 3, approval of prior ad hoc meeting minutes. I will give you a quick minute to take a look at those.
Here, but late. I don't know if that matters for the meeting minutes.
It does not.
It does?
It does not.
Okay, gotcha.
So if it doesn't, then shouldn't it reflect that she was here?
Yeah, that was my real question. Thanks, Josh.
Oh, that was your request. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, I
I thought
wasn't
you meant in
clear.
terms of voting, did it matter?
No, we didn't vote on anything. Yeah, yeah.
No, I mean,
Josh
as
is
far
fine.
as your approval now of the minutes, I thought that's what you were asking since you were late to that.
Oh, no, no, no,
But
no.
Okay, I understand now.
My bad, sorry.
Board Member Hayson. Yes, then you probably should have the minutes
So
amended.
I'll entertain a motion to amend the minutes if there's no other comments.
I do have a couple other comments.
Yeah, I do too.
All right, who start with you, Board Member Haston?
Yes, regarding the small business grant discussion, I see that there's a really vague line about committee members ask questions and comments. And I just recall there being a broader discussion about that I feel like the general public needs to hear in terms of details that were discussed.
Right.
And just to be reflected in the public record. Questions and comments, maybe we highlight some of the questions and comments that were made. One, for example, one of my comments was that maybe we have them at 0% interest loans so that we're able to continue to grow.
Yep, and we had a discussion on that.
As
Yep.
opposed to just giving it back, or giving it away.
Okay, so just a thought then, that is on the video because it's recorded.
Correct. But most people are not going to go watch an hour-long video.
Well, go ahead. What are your other comments?
That was it. It's just that we need to, I feel like as a body that's representing the public's interest, most people are not going to be reading the minutes and watching the video and the agenda. So I feel like we need to reflect more detailed minutes if we're having discussions like that, discussing new programs.
All right,
I think
thank
that's
you.
a good point, because I was late, so I went back to watch it,
Uh-huh.
but I hadn't got to that part yet. So I think we do to make sure our minutes reflect what actually happened.
So,
And I do have another comment, but I'll wait for you
oh,
guys.
yes.
That's
Any
it.
other comments from your, okay, Board Member Channel?
It also says Jamari gave an overview of new legislation. This isn't legislation that we were discussing. This was a program we were trying to implement from the IDB, correct?
Yeah, I think what this is pertaining to, and maybe Jamar did give an update on some new legislation within Metro, but that was separate from this small business grant that came from the Industrial Development Board. So yes, those two different
I missed that part of the
items.
video, because I didn't know there
It
was.
was
any-
an overview, I think actually Josh, you gave that presentation about all the legislation that may impact and things that we do as the IDB, such as like the industrial development.
There was
geo
multiple,
loans.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, let me stop. Sorry, any other comments from your,
No, I'm just curious
Okay.
as to what that was.
so,
And if it was multiple, like you're saying, then the minutes aren't reflective of that either.
so then, I'll defer to legal. I mean, they don't want, if the board has questions about the minutes. I have two colleagues that don't want to approve the minutes. I guess what should be most sense is we don't approve the minutes today. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
And
would
then-
probably recommend there be a motion to defer approval of the minutes, subject to the changes that Board Member Haston and Board Member Chow mentioned. I believe, is it the Department of Finance produces the minutes?
That's correct.
Does that? Okay.
That's correct.
So I would suggest you just do a deferral, and then let us get with finance to make some of the additional changes, and then we can bring it back before the committee at your next committee meeting.
All right, before we do that, any other comments from either of you regarding the minutes? Start with you first, to my left, Board Member Channel.
No more than what I've already provided.
Okay.
All right, so with that, I'll entertain a motion to defer approval of the meeting minutes.
Motion.
All right, so we have a motion by Board Member Haston. Do we have a second?
Was a motion to defer?
Motion to defer, that's correct.
Second.
All right, we have a motion properly seconded. Any discussion? All right, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Oh, aye, sorry.
I'm assuming I need to vote.
No, you don't need to vote. If you
Oh,
got
okay,
it.
just them, okay, that's fine. All right, motion carried. Thank you, board members, for your feedback.
Excuse me.
Moving on to item number four, affordable housing research. We did talk about this, and so this is something that we'll continue on. And just as a note, the cities that we're looking at are Atlanta, which we'll be likely focusing on today, Pure Cities, Charlotte, Denver, Asheville, and New Orleans. And for my notes, Board Member Haston would take Atlanta. Board Member Channel, you took New Orleans. And I think I have, Mark, I'm sorry, I think I missed this city, Austin. Mark has Austin. And then I'll take care of, I guess I'll do double duty, Denver and Asheville. So that's what we had, so thank you. And I know you had your presentation ready to go, so I'll defer to you now and let you talk to us about Atlanta.
Quick
Thank you
question.
for,
Did
yes.
no one take Denver and Nashville before? I can't remember.
Say it one more time.
Did no one take those two cities before?
Yeah, so I just took both of them, because
No one took them? Is that what you're saying?
no, I just said I would do it. Because,
Oh, the last time you did?
Yeah,
You
yeah,
took
yeah.
both? Okay.
Yeah, because
Gotcha.
it was like one city per person, and then, so I just said I would. do
Okay, I
both.
just want to make sure.
But
we
if
weren't
you've already
discounting.
done Asheville or Denver,
No, I only took New Orleans.
Oh,
I was
okay.
just asking, did somebody else take the two
Yeah.
cities you just mentioned you were taking?
Awesome.
all right, thank you.
Well, thanks for the opportunity. I just want to say that for folks that are watching, or there's hyperlinks in this PDF. It's color coded and stuff as well. So if you see the PDF, it looks brighter than what we're seeing. I think just an overview. Nashville recently came out with the Imagine Nashville plan. 10,000 survey respondents, all sorts of demographics, including kids, which is incredible. And there were some really great ideas for action in terms of what our city needs to do beyond just a typical comprehensive plan. And given that there's so much public engagement as a part of it, I think it's a great thing for us to review and report as we're thinking about policies that we enact here on the IDB, considering a lot of the ideas for action apply to what we can do as a board. So specifically, if you look in subsection D on that second page of the report, it was recommended to substantially accelerate funding for both public and private housing affordability ventures, including maximizing all sources of revenue and funding. And so lots of examples. One that we've yet to enact on a city level but is enabled by the state, which is interesting, is the ability to issue our own funds as a city tied to the city's credit rating, which we are one of 12 or 13 cities with a AA bond rating, likely higher in the coming months. So it's like knowing that we have this ability, there's a lot of things and new tools that we could create should this legislation get introduced by the Metro Council, that I think we have an opportunity and a moral obligation personally to enact. So there are some high points of what we have done as a city. The Barnes Funds is an incredible resource. What I would say related to that, though, is that a lot of those funds in the recent years have been funded via ARPA dollars, which are federal dollars, as opposed to our general operating budget. So maybe changes there. Again, we don't control that, but should there be changes, maybe we could play a part. And then other incentives that we can be a part of. There's lots of programming. So as well as we're getting geared up for TOD grants, those may come through us as a board, so we should be prepared to work with the city and developers to enact and make that as streamlined as possible. And then I guess just jumping into Atlanta, just an overview. The city of Atlanta is part of a different sort of metro region than ours. Their MSA is a 20-county region, I think, versus our 10-county region. And the city of Atlanta is actually spread across 2 counties as opposed to Nashville, which is a metropolitan government. But I guess just a comparison, their median household income is the same as ours. Their median owner-occupied value is actually higher than ours. Their rents are higher than ours, except for their 80% AMI rents, and yet they're more dense than us. And so it's just a point of comparison to show that the city can support more density as a way of actually making rental prices and homeownership more attainable for low to moderate income households. So and there's data in there to back that up as well, so anyone watching can represent and do their own due diligence. But I mean, their population per square mile is almost double what ours is as a city, and yet their values and whatnot are good. So just a comparison. Also, the IDB in Nashville is set up a little bit differently than City of Atlanta. The IDB here is housed within the mayor's office, as we know, in the Office of Economic Community Development, whereas in a lot of other metros, it is essentially outside of the mayor's office and as a part of the chamber, or more related to the chambers of commerce. And so that's kind of how this is set up.
Josh, can I stop you right there?
Yes.
Is that legally correct that we're housed within versus we get the support from?
Yeah, I mean, I think more precise would be you get administrative support from the mayor's office. I mean, as
Through our
far as
interlocal agreement.
Correct.
Yeah, as far as an entity standpoint, the IDB is separate. And to what Board Member Haston is talking about, I mean, there is the ability for you to operate independently of Metro, but currently there is an interlocal agreement, and there's been one in place where I think you might have more institutional knowledge than I do, Nigel. Has it been 8 years, 10 years?
I mean, I've been on the board almost 10 years, so it was in place before then. So
10 plus years, there's been this interlocal agreement where Metro has provided the assistance, the administrative, the legal, financial support to the board.
Okay. Which absolutely has its tremendous benefits from a cost sharing perspective. But from maybe a continuity of policy, sometimes there could be interruptions from that perspective. So in terms of thinking about policies from an investment perspective, a lot of times those take longer than 4 to 8 years. I mean, if you're talking about housing policy, that plays out over generations. Same thing as planning policy. So being able to see and measure those results with the same programs for more than one mayoral administration may prove beneficial for the city of Nashville long term. But that's kind of how Atlanta's set up, and there's multiple different players that operate with similar authorities as our IDB. Invest Atlanta is the largest one. It again sort of functions like the IDB meshed with what would be the downtown chamber, if you will. And so all of these sort of follow a similar sort of setup with that, except for Georgia Department of Community Affairs is separate. That's not an IDB. That's just like THDA. Every state has their own, they're called state HFA, or Housing Finance Agency. Likewise, Atlanta Housing is, there's the Housing Authority of the City of Atlanta, and then there's also a Housing Authority of Fulton County. That functions, same role, similar enabling legislation as MDHA. But then in jumping into the actual tools, I just, for those, again, watching at home or reviewing this, we talked previously in terms of revamping our website. I think Invest Atlanta has an incredible website that really walks through all their tools with lots of details and what is available, what they can do, even if Invest Atlanta is not the one that's responsible for that funding mechanism. So just as we look through maybe
Right. Go ahead.
potential 2025 goals, their website, I mean, maybe we should model our website something similar to that, where we're not having to filter through a ton of different Metro Nashville websites just to figure out what tools TNECD may be offering. So just thinking about that in the coming years. And again, there's links in here for people to actually reference that. Now diving into the individual tools, kind of what I've done is, these are, again, all the tools that they mention on their website. And then I've kind of done a comparison to if we do that in Nashville, who handles it, and what it could look like if we don't. So this is going to be tedious, but tax exempt, I'm going to go line by line. Tax exempt bond financing, THDA currently handles that, specifically private activity bonds. They allocate those to developers who then come to us as conduit issuers, or the Health and Ed Board in Atlanta. Invest Atlanta kind of handles that for a lot of their entities. The Housing Opportunity Bond Financing for small ones. Here again, they've got so many programs for different types of things that they want to accomplish. Like here at the IDB, we've got tax exempt financing as well, but it's largely geared towards big projects like what we're going to hear about at our board meeting this morning, whereas they've got programs for each individual thing that they're looking to accomplish, which is again something maybe we could look at as a board. So small multifamily, if there are folks that are looking to do smaller deals, or that maybe don't have the balance sheet to do big deals, that's a great way to diversify our developer pool in terms of the types of projects that get built as well as who's doing said developments. So there's a program in there for that. So currently, there is not one in Nashville that functions from a bond financing perspective like that. However,
Are you talking about item number 2?
item number 2, the housing opportunity bond financing for small multifamily. So we could do that as a board should Metro Council pass legislation, knock on wood, hopefully next year, that would allow them to enact House Bill 1229 and Senate Bill 1137 that was passed. So there's several things within that as well. So as we're thinking about if that legislation gets passed next year, what could our individual program look like? What's our strike box of things and tools that we're looking to create to spur the different types of developments that we know the city needs? So maybe it's having a set aside within that pool for small multifamily, whether that's your 10-unit townhome deal, which there's a ton of those popping up all over the city. There's an opportunity with this legislation, should it be passed, that we could say 20% of those are affordable or available to incomes 80% below. We could do that. We don't do that, but we could do that. So understanding, again, what our strike box is. Same thing for their single-family bond financing program. We don't currently have that. We could do that, but we don't. So it's, again, as this tool potentially gets approved next year, having a strike box for that. So there's neighborhoods getting planned left and right in Antioch, in Madison, and Hermitage. As a board, we could have a tool that says we want, we would help provide some bond financing if you set aside these homes at 80% or even 120% AMI. We could do that. Atlanta's doing it. Same thing for housing opportunity bond financing for nonprofits. We could broaden that tool again to include that. The Barnes funds can currently act in a similar role, depending on how the program descriptions are structured, each funding availability, but those are grants versus bonds that are loans. So it's understanding the difference between how those are set up. The Home for Supportive Housing Fund, to my knowledge, I don't know that we have that here in Nashville. I could be wrong. Supportive housing is much needed. That's the lowest barrier to entry housing. We have similar things like the Strobel House, and we have nonprofits that are doing some stuff. And a lot of that's funded via Barnes funds and other subsidies allocated via THDA or MDHA. But again, maybe we could do that, or we could lean in and request or send a letter of intent or a letter of desire to various philanthropic organizations to ramp up their support. Vine City Trust Fund financing. Vine City is a neighborhood in Atlanta, close to downtown, on the west side of downtown. And so that is a trust fund that functions just like the Barnes Fund, but it's specifically for Vine City. There's another one on here as well, I think, around the Beltline. Yeah, and the Beltline, for those that aren't aware, is it's like a 22 or 26 mile, some large rails to trails development in inner city Atlanta that spurred billions of dollars of economic development, both in office and retail and multifamily. And a part of that initial legislation where they created a TIF district, they call them TADs in Atlanta, they were required to have a certain number of affordable units. I do not remember what that affordable unit count was. I want to say it was like 8 to 10,000 units, something like that. But anyways, that's neither here nor there. Home Investment Partnership, MDHA and THDA currently have those programs. I don't know or think that we could get those programs through the IDB. Those tend to be grants, and those also tend to change annually, depending on like who's what's the sort of need is across the city. So I think there was one last year where it was geared towards rental housing 80% below, whereas THDA has one that's geared towards single-family home ownership in rural areas. So it really just depends, but again, that's not really a tool that we could have at our disposal. Housing opportunity bond financing for large multifamily. Again, no, we don't have that. This is specifically looking at different types of bonds, not private activity bonds, which we do already currently issue. But we could do that, again, should we, as a city, choose to enact this legislation at Metro Council. And again, for those listening at home, I think that would be an incredible idea, as well as a way to build mixed income communities. As a city, we have the ability to structure these programs such that we could design exactly what we want to fund, and as a board we could, again, design the programs to fund the deals that we think are what the city needs. So if that's deals along corridors that are part of mixed-use developments, we could do that. Or if it's deals that are not 100% affordable, we could do that. That would be up to the rest of the board members on how we could structure that program, as well as working in concert with Metro Council, because what we know as a city is that we need so much housing, but we don't necessarily need to put it only in certain locations. So we could prioritize funding to put it in more high opportunity areas, and maybe that's our strike box. There's ways that we can structure the funding in such a way that again, other cities are already doing. Same thing for housing opportunity bond finance. Moving on to other tools that are less housing, or actually that one's not less housing releasing. Brownfield revolving loan fund, we don't have that, but TDEC does. Brownfields are just, for those that don't know, that's environmentally contaminated. So it's important as a city to change some of these and bring them back to active commerce, as long as it's done in a safe manner. But we don't administer those programs, TDEC does. But what's interesting though is Invest Atlanta has a link to the TDEC grants on their page. So we don't have that. Maybe we could, because TDEC has those grants annually. We could even link to other places where the EPA currently issues these grants. I know MDHA is chasing $1 million grant for something similar right now. So thinking about other things that we could do as a quasi-governmental agency, we could do these that aren't necessarily benefiting some of the projects that we see, but we could be helping those projects get done. Transit-oriented development fund. So no, but the IDB and MDHA and East Bank Authority all have TIP-ability and function similarly. Like I said, tax allocation district financing, that's the same thing as TIF. We currently have that ability as a city. Potentially we could do more of those. I know there's several active ones across the city already. I would venture to say that more of those might be coming or popping up across the city down the line, just because, again, there's so much more creative financing that we could do as a city.
Can you-
Yes, go ahead.
You go back to one, the
Yeah.
Transit-Oriented Development Fund.
Mm-hmm.
Is this is through their IDB? And I don't know how much time you spent on this. I guess how much, if you did this, and if not, no worries, how much are they allocating, like, to that one? Because that's
Great
obviously
question.
something we've had a lot of
Yeah,
discussion on.
that's a great question. I actually don't know.
Okay.
That's something I can do some more research on.
No worries, it was just because obviously for us, we think about this year, which I think all of us, I think I saw all the three of us were there, even though it wasn't the same thing. This board did a pilot for the WeGo facility in North
Correct.
Nashville. We were all there, which is really transforming how people get around. And you think about economic development and jobs, that's key. And it's in the main corridor. And, you know, we think about Dominium that's coming for us later this morning. Their development that just opened on Dickerson Road, same thing. It's
Yeah.
like, even though it's not transit oriented, it's on a major corridor.
Exactly.
So it's like the housing and transit piece
It's
go
really-
ahead. And I think there's an article recently I saw, that's part of why I was thinking about it.
Yeah.
I saw recently about that. You know, they go hand in hand.
Absolutely, yeah. The two are I think married is the
Yeah.
way that Mayor O'Connell likes to say, which is absolutely true.
Yeah, for sure. Well, good. Okay.
So I do know in the transit fund or transit referendum that was voted on, there was already a line item in that to help acquire right-of-way for additional things like that. And so maybe there's some opportunity for us to work creatively with the developers that are hoping to work with WeGo
Yeah.
through that. So, again, for those developers and attorneys that may be listening, that would be a great project, in my opinion, as well as leveraging that with other federal grants that are already out there that I'm sure Metro's currently chasing to bolster the amount of grant funding available. But, again, we would likely be the board, should they award those, that they allocates that funding out to various developments across the city. Urban enterprise zones, I couldn't really understand what that was. So I don't know if we do that or not. New market tax credits, we don't handle that directly, but various CDFIs like Pathway do deals like that. CPACE, again, we don't do that. We kind of work with national lenders.
Actually, Board Member Heston, we do CPACER programs through the trustee's office.
Oh, so I know that we have the programs. I'm saying the IDB doesn't
Oh, you're
administer
talking about
those.
IDB directly, gotcha.
Correct. Yeah. I think only a handful of please correct me. I think only a handful of developments have used them to date so far.
That's
in
correct. I mean, I think the
Nashville.
program was just developed maybe, I think, 2 years ago, so it's
Correct.
still pretty new.
Still pretty. Yeah, it's and for those that again don't know, it's related to energy efficiency financing. So it's if you've got that fancy HVAC, Energy Star HVAC, maybe you can get cheaper financing to help cover that cost. Another one, 501c3 bonds. Yes, we do that. The IDB and TSU student housing deal that, again, we're hopefully going to hear an update on at the board meeting, would be the first project that, to my knowledge, we've done in the city. I think that is untapped in terms of this opportunity that we could explore as a board. And then again, if we're talking about issuance fees, I mean, that was a massive bond issuance. That's funding that we could then reallocate these other small business development grants or daycares or anything like that. So to the extent that we can attract more developments like that, I think is desired. Industrial Development Board revenue bonds, yes, we do those. I think we've got several of those projects active across the city. Lease purchase bonds, yes, I think we can do, but I don't know that we have. Do you know if we have, Josh?
Not to my knowledge, but
I don't think we've done any. Since I've been on the board, I don't recall.
I can't think of any in recent memory.
Gotcha. Economic Opportunity Zone funds, no, we don't, but we have those funds set up across the city, and a lot of developers have used them. I'm thinking in Wedgwood, Houston, specifically, there's a ton of development that's occurred because of those.
What is it? What is the Economic Opportunity Fund?
It's part of the 2017 Tax Reform Act. There was a program created called the Opportunity Zones,
Oh,
which
yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
help
got it.
defer
Yep,
capital
yep, yep,
gains.
Yep, yep, got it.
Yeah, I think a tremendous amount of development has occurred in that neighborhood specifically
Got it.
because of that program.
Got it.
So, again, a lot of this stuff are things that we don't necessarily handle, but I just want to point out on Invest Atlanta's website, they are linking directly to the other people that handle it. So I think we have a link potentially to Nashville, or Tennessee film credits. I don't know how actively. It's kind of hard to find. So if our website's more navigable, maybe there's an opportunity to stimulate more economic development that way.
Yeah, I just went on their website just now, Invest Atlanta. Is this the IDB website?
Yeah, so again,
It's a little different.
It's a little different, but it has general authorities, it's the same authorities that we have as the IDB.
Invest Atlanta is like their ECD office
For Atlanta.
Correct.
Okay.
Do you know what WorkSource Atlanta was? Or maybe you can click on it. Because it says Jamari's working on it, but what exactly is it?
Cannot remember exactly.
Say,
Don't
what
worry
was
about
that?
it. WorkSource Atlanta. You can probably click on it.
WorkSource Atlanta?
Yeah. If you can't find it, don't worry about it.
I don't know.
Just curious.
Is that a different website?
It is still on that. Transparently, I prepared this like 3 months ago.
Yeah, right.
So
Don't worry about it. Don't worry
Oh,
about it.
yeah, I'm on there. It says WorkSource Atlanta. I think that's the right thing. It's about connecting in like people with jobs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah. Were you curious if that was on the Invest Atlanta website?
I was
If
curious
it's
what the
a link.
program was.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, that's all. Because it says Jamari's working on it, but I was just curious as to what exactly it is.
So, again, I think website, we need to circle back to that. Even if we're not the administrating agency, like, we can connect people to resources. Same, flipping to the next page, like, it's,
Is this the economic tools page?
yeah, so that's a similar authority, but I think that's Fulton County, which is the larger, that's the larger county that contains most of Atlanta. Development Authority of Fulton County, DAFC. So they same similar tools. I don't need to rehash that. One thing that I did want to point out, though, just because I know it's a growing need in our city, is they are already offering a child care tax credit. And according to their website, it's you can get a tax credit from Fulton County, or Development Authority of Fulton County, for 100% of the cost of construction or purchase spread 10% over 10. Spread 10%
There's
over 10 years.
a lot of stuff to put together.
Exactly.
You did a good job saying all that because my tongue was getting twisted trying to read it.
So I mean, if we can have a similar program like that, or again, if we're thinking about how do we pair how do we get childcare into new bond issuances that we bring through the board? I think these are things and tools that we could potentially add to our strike box of what is a good project that we would like to support. And so if we know if it's effective in Atlanta, it's likely effective here. I don't know the efficacy transparently, so maybe we can reach out to see.
Yeah, I was just curious. Yeah, and I was curious. Yeah, is this more for the developer, you think, or more on the company that actually, let's say,
So
developer?
I think it's both. I think
Okay.
that first one is for the developer, and I think so the developer.
You said employers. That's why I was.
Yeah. So 100% of the construction cost for over 10 years. I think that portion's for the developer, or employers who provide child care eligible at a credit of 75% of the employer's direct cost. So if employers are paying, let's just say, $100 a week per kid, then they're writing off $75 per kid. So, if they're including that, I know some of the developments currently under construction in Nashville are already considering childcare as a part of the development because of the way to attract their own workforce.
That's right.
But as we're thinking about larger developments, maybe if Global Mall comes to us with a deal, for example, maybe there's some sort of idea of how we're.
You mean Hickory Hollow Mall?
Yes.
Just to be clear.
Yes.
Stop with that.
Name
I'm-
may change
It's
again.
a
I'm just
rebrand.
joking. I'm messing with you.
But
I'm
again,
aging myself. I shouldn't have said anything.
No, I mean, my mom used to work at that mall back in the
Hi.
80s, so I heard.
Oh, okay, I was a little bit after her, at least. A little bit after that.
So, anyways, I think there's creative tools that as we're thinking about the tools and strike boxes ourselves, things that we want to include that we think make a project, quote, good, I think there are ways that we can help get those financed, but it's a win-win. So,
And this money is coming from Fulton County?
yeah, so again, they've been doing a lot of these programs for years. So as we're thinking about, if we're structuring pilots and we're getting pilot fees, or bond issuance fees, I mean, that's how a lot of these things are being subsidized. Not to mention they're also set up differently than us because they're getting some of those federal grants already coming to
Right.
them. So they've got a bigger pot of money to pull from to reallocate anyways. But because of these other programs, they've got additional revenue that can be, again, reallocated. And then, lastly, something that Atlanta is doing a phenomenal job at is tapping into their philanthropic community. And as folks know, we've got a massive nonprofit sector in Nashville. And there are great nonprofits that are investing in affordable housing and providing grants and loans and all that. I think it currently transparently pales in comparison to what Atlanta is doing. And again, going back to population size, very similar. So recently, they had a $300 million public-private partnership where $100 million came from the Whitehead and Woodruff Foundations, with another $100 million from the Community Foundation, and then another $100 million came from the City of Atlanta's bond fund. So again, the same sort of tools that we're talking about that we can create, they've already done. And there's a model that we can essentially work to get a similar program structured here, should we choose to. So of that $100 million, for example, of the housing bond from the City of Atlanta, $38 million went to finance construction of affordable apartments on publicly owned land. I mean, that's big. And that development's owned by the city. 15 million went to public land infrastructure. As we know, or as many folks in the development sector know, that we are very lacking in the infrastructure, especially in some of our disinvested communities. So there's largely a bigger chunk of infrastructure money that needs to be spent to make that development feasible anyways. So that's streets, sidewalks, stormwater management systems. $29 million went to public, to multifamily gap financing, specifically for LIHTC and mixed income deals, and then $3 million went to administration and bond issuance costs. So we've got to, if we're going to have programs like this, we need to be able to pay our staff to make sure we're managing those investments made by city dollars effectively. So I think that's an important thing that we need to think about as we are potentially looking to scale and grow. We need to be able to hire and pay staff. Another thing, a Heritage Owner-Occupied Rehab Program. $30,000 loans with 5 to 10 year terms for home repair for low-income homeowners. That'd be massive. There's a ton of homeowners that are being displaced because they can't afford the property taxes. Or to maintain their own homes. So they're creating those programs. Rebuilding.
Rebuilding together.
Yeah, I was gonna say, Rebuilding Together's done
Makes a
that.
big difference, yeah.
Huge difference. But again, Rebuilding Together has been largely funded to date by Barnes funds, other public donations, and bank grants. Like, that's how a lot of the revenue is generated. I'm saying this program is created using bond funds funded by the city. And again, these are 5 to 10 year loans with 0% interest. So they're getting that $30,000 back that they can then reallocate. So instead of just giving it away like Barnes money, it's a recurring revenue stream. Even if it's 0% interest, it's coming back to us that they can then reallocate. Senior Tax Relief Fund, the Housing Fund, sponsored by Amazon, is already doing that. Also, Representative Love sponsored legislation that was approved last year, which has been huge.
Which are you on the tax relief?
Senior Tax Relief.
Oh, okay, like property tax?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know the specifics of this potential program, but again, advertising that program would be huge. I don't know locally in Nashville how many users are taking making use of what legislation is already out there. LaTanya, you may know the legislation. Does that, how much income can people make as a senior citizen to qualify for the property tax freeze?
I can't remember.
I think it increased to 60,000, or it's in the 60,000 based on.
That seems right. I saw an email about it recently that just came out.
Yeah.
So I actually thought it was too low.
Yeah, it's been pretty low for a while, but as Board Member Haston mentioned, the legislation that Representative Love put through the General Assembly allowed counties to opt in for the higher income threshold. And I want to say it's 60,000, but it's also indexed, so it could go up, I think, each year, depending on maybe like the change in the Social Security, how much you get, or something like that.
Yeah. And so, again, if we're helping to advertise those programs, maybe there's better buy-in, and that's more stability for our communities, more stability for our seniors. And then, I mean, seniors play a vital role in our communities. So for a lot of folks, that's childcare if grandma's around. So if grandma's not around, what do we do then? Mm-hmm. So thinking about how we're stabilizing and helping get more buy-in for those programs. They had an eviction, they took ARPA money and they had an eviction prevention program. So there's just a ton of tools in Atlanta, some of which we already have, many of which we could bolster, and that we have the ability via enabling legislation at the state level to bolster those programs should they be approved at the local level.
Well, great presentation. Any questions or comments from you, Board Member Channel?
So, what time is it? Ooh, we got another
Okay.
meeting starting, so I won't take up too much time.
Yep.
But thank you, Josh. I think this was handed out at the last meeting.
Correct.
It was.
And I know I had bothered Josh to email it to me so I can use the same
Yeah.
format.
So
And
Jamari's.
Jamari's gonna send it
Jamari,
out.
did he send it to you?
He said he was gonna send it out.
Okay,
So
All of
he's-
us.
he sent the link
He
earlier
did.
this week, so the link has this PDF
Perfect.
In there.
as well as the PowerPoint presentation.
Okay, so I need it, okay, if it's a PDF, I gotta figure out how to manipulate that, because I wanna use
So,
the
I mean,
same.
it has the PDF and the PowerPoint.
Oh,
so-
perfect.
So you don't have to
Awesome,
manipulate the
great.
PowerPoint.
I wanna use the same format that you did for,
New
New
Orleans.
Orleans,
N.O.
and I might sneak in a couple of other cities.
Do you, go ahead, sorry.
Because I'm curious, as our bond counsel walked in, I'm curious to what Memphis has been doing. And then I'm also curious as to what DC's been doing, because they have a similar population to us and a similar metropolitan area, although DC is just DC. So I may, if I have time, sneak in those two, since I haven't finished my homework for New Orleans anyway.
We want to
So-
plan on hearing N.O. next.
Say it
New
again.
Orleans next.
You can add it to next, absolutely. I had
Okay.
committed to Jamari, I was gonna be done today, but once I realized that Josh hadn't gone yet, I said, oh, I got more time to finish my homework.
Yeah.
But a couple of things, thank you for weaving in, all the possible tools, which is actually the conversation I think we started last year outside of housing. And I think we need to go back to that larger discussion. I know this is imminent because of the legislation that was passed at the state. So we can lean on council to pass what needs to be passed for the housing space. But thank you for weaving in all the other tools that we as a board can take advantage of, that we need to consider. That actually was the purpose of this committee. So we can sit down and figure out, one, how we function, two, what are the priorities, and three, how do we market it to attract the types of deals that the city needs. So I just want to thank you for that, for taking us back to why this committee even started, so.
Anything else?
That's all I got, because I don't want to hold us up. We got another meeting.
Any other final comments?
I guess just the last thing is that going back to your comment, thank you, LaTanya, is that this committee was formed to explore more tools that we need to create, as well as reform that needs to happen, in my opinion, as a part of how we're set up. And to the extent that we have these reoccurring meetings, I think is essential. So even if we don't have a board meeting because of projects or whatever, I think it's essential, and I would make a recommendation that we have this ad hoc meeting standing, even if there's not a board meeting.
I agree.
So,
All right.
Yeah.
We'll also certainly talk with Jamari about that. Appreciate your feedback on that.
is there a way that we can make a motion to do that?
I don't
That
think
would be good.
I don't necessarily know if we have to make a motion. It's just scheduling. So,
Let's do it then. And I can also add with that, when this committee was formed, there was another committee that council had formed. It was the tax abatement committee that Berkeley was leading. So part of the reason why when I was sitting in Jamari's seat, I was quietly pushing y'all to create this committee, so that we could work alongside what that committee was doing, the tax abatement committee. So that's long since done. I think it might be time for us to go back and look at that report. We might even want to invite Berkeley and maybe some others from that committee to talk about some of the recommendations that came out of that, because it definitely impacts us. They talked about everything we could do and everything that we were doing.
Yeah.
So,
all right, I remember watching some of those meetings. So, thank you both for your feedback. What I would say too, just my thoughts on this, again, Board Member Haston, thank you for putting this together. Really good information. As we continue to look at pure cities, what I would say is, and this is for all of us, also, is take a look at, this is great presentation, a lot in here. As we look at each city, kind of benchmark, hey, maybe what are the top 2 or 3 items from each city that we really like. And then, so that would be one item. The second item, and I would probably put this on you for Atlanta, because you did the research on this, is kind of distinguishing between, hey, here are the items, to the extent we can, here are the items that this board can do currently by statute and by our statute, versus items that would be great to do, but will also require like changes to the Metro code. Which I know is a little bit more.
Real quick on that,
Yes.
the report from the tax, I can't remember the proper name of the
It's
committee.
the
Tax
tax
abatement
abatement
was a long
and
name.
increment
The tax
study
increment,
formulation.
yes,
It's like 15 words for the committee. The report actually covers what our authorities are. So
Right.
that's already,
Right, but what I'm speaking
easily
to is,
grasp that.
yeah, what I'm speaking more to is like applying what we see in these other cities to what's currently applicable that we're not doing, is what I'm getting at, specifically with them, so. I know it's a little bit more homework, but just something to
well,
consider.
that's what I was getting at. That's homework you don't have to worry about what authority we can do. And some of it, we don't even have to go to council because we already have the authority just because we're an IDB and that
Right.
statute allows us to do it. So that's a little less homework for us.
That's right, I just want us to, as we're looking at these cities that
Oh, yeah,
are doing
absolutely.
things that we're not doing, it's like, let's also funnel in things that they're doing that we have the authority to do, that we really like, that they're currently doing, so we know that our board can do it. Really great discussion. All right, appreciate everyone's time and comments on that. With that, we will adjourn. It is here. We will adjourn the ad hoc meeting of the Industrial Development Board. I want to thank Metro ECD, Metro Legal, and most of all, thank you, ad hoc board members. And we will adjourn here at 10:12. Thank you, everyone.